Go on then. Pow, pow. I win. Don't want to see me shining. I win.
All right. Welcome to the Bald Eagle Podcast. I am Shawn Cressman. I am the Bald Eagle. All right. So I always start my podcast off with 3 rules. I try and keep things pretty consistent. Okay, we're getting some feedback there. Keep things pretty consistent. So the 3 rules that I have for my podcast. Rule number 1, the most important rule: no politics. We won't talk about that at all, unless, of course, in the instance that it would impact the game, and so far it has not. I don't talk about personal information. A lot of people, they I get maybe they're interested in, but a lot of the shows in the morning, in the afternoon, the pregame shows and stuff talk about people's personal lives. I don't talk about any of that stuff. It's strictly football. Strictly what happened in games and what happens on the field. We don't talk about any of that outside stuff, and I'm not censored to say whatever I want. So hopefully no kids are around, or I don't get that bad. All right, so we are 4 days away from Super Bowl 55. Unfortunately, the Eagles aren't in it, so this is the Bald Eagle Podcast playoff special, because I love the NFL too. I'm not just going to ignore the playoffs, but 4 days till Super Bowl 55. You probably already know that the number 1 AFC ranked Kansas City Chiefs are going to Tampa Bay. First time it's ever been a team has ever played the Super Bowl at home. Going to Tampa Bay, who was ranked 5th in the NFC. So that is Sunday, February 7th. It's on at 6:30 p.m. and it's on CBS. So I mentioned it's going to be played. Tampa Bay will be the first team in the Super Bowl era to play a championship or the Super Bowl at home. There are other teams that have played championship games at home, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But their home stadium is Raymond James Stadium. It is a natural grass field. And in two surveys that I could find, one in 2009 and 2015, was rated second best in the league. Both times Arizona won best field in the league, but rated the second best field in the league by the players. So good surface, it's natural grass. Now, I found this interesting when I was, the Eagles are going to win the Super Bowl, Dylan. That's right. I found it interesting that, it seems common sense, but there's a pretty significant difference as far as injuries are concerned on grass fields and on turf fields. Now, so they did some studies between 2012 and 2018. And they noticed that on turf fields, overall, there was a 28% higher rate of non-contact lower extremity injuries. So lower extremity would be knees, hips, ankles, all that stuff. So 28% overall. Now, a subset of that were knee injuries. There was a 32% increase on knee injuries on turf, and a drastic 69% increase of non-contact. These are all non-contact injuries. I don't know that they did a study for contact injuries. I would assume that'd be even worse as well, because you'd land on a harder surface, but a 69% increase in non-contact foot and ankle injuries. So good news that the Super Bowl is on grass, and apparently after this, the NFLPA actually was the organization that did this study. And after the results of the study came out, they can't demand, but they requested that all stadiums turn into natural grass until the technology for turf catches up and these increases in injuries are eliminated. Now at around 6:30 in Tampa, Florida, the weather is supposed to be around 61 degrees. So that's comfortable, especially if you're playing football. There are some showers possible. Earlier in the day, there are thunderstorms expected, but I'm sure that the field will be covered and maintained well. Winds are light and variable, east-northeast at 6 miles an hour, and the chance of those showers is 30%. That is all from weather.com. And I mentioned that there is a high chance of thunderstorms, somewhere in the 70% area of thunderstorms during the day. So I'm sure they'll have the field covered. All right, so let's get to some injuries. Nothing real significant. Well, there is some, I guess, but so for Tampa Bay, as of the report earlier today, now I know that there was going to be a new report coming out. I'm not sure if it has, but as of earlier today, wide receiver Antonio Brown was doubtful with a knee injury. Safety Jordan Whitehead was doubtful with a shoulder and knee injury. Their linebacker Levante David was questionable with a hamstring, although on Monday Arians said that he'll play. Safety Antone Winfield is questionable with an ankle injury, and that if all three aren't able to play, that could be significant for Tampa Bay's defense, which is really, I would assume Tampa Bay is going to rely primarily on their defense to have a shot at this game. But that would be significant. Now we know David's going to play, at least according to Bruce Arians. But Winfield and Whitehead, if they don't play, now I had a stat here: Levante David, Anton Winfield, and Jordan Whitehead were ranked respectively second, third, and fourth in tackles for the Buccaneers. So if they had all three not been able to play, that would be relatively significant. However, it seems like they're all most likely going to play. Perhaps safety Jordan Whitehead might not, but the other two most likely. In addition to being ranked second, third, and fourth in tackles, those three also each have one sack and a forced fumble through the season. Dylan, you're going to have to be patient. I'm going to show you I'll go over my take on who's going to win. Best quarterback ever historically, but currently probably the best quarterback is Mahomes. So that's an argument. That's something we're going to talk about later. Some injuries for Kansas City. Their tackle Eric Fisher is out, and this would not be his first game missed. He missed 8 games as well. So the Chiefs are 27-1 while Fisher is in the lineup. They're 4-4 without him. So that's a relatively big loss on offensive line. Running back Le'Veon Bell is questionable. Corner Rashad Fenton questionable with a foot injury. Le'Veon Bell, actually, by the way, had a knee injury, and Eric Fisher, I'm assuming, tore his Achilles. But then we have cornerback L'Jarius Sneed. He's questionable with a concussion. Sammy Watkins is questionable with a calf, but he said that he is very optimistic about playing on Sunday. And then Mahomes had that turf toe injury. He was limping around a little bit. He recently said it's pretty close to 100, and that I'm sure it will be 100% by game day. So some possible. Well, Eric Fisher is significant, but some of the other things are questionable. I'm sure they'll make a play to play. Per Ian Rappaport, everyone was expected to practice today, except of course tackle Eric Fisher, who's out with an Achilles. Ian Rappaport also reported that both Kansas City and Tampa Bay are clear of any COVID-19 issues based on the latest round of testing. So no one has tested positive. It doesn't mean they're completely clear of all COVID. There are 2 players that are on the list as what they call close contacts or high-risk close contacts. So Demarcus Robinson and wide receiver Demarcus Robinson and center Daniel Kilgore are those 2 players. And essentially what happened is they brought a barber into the Chiefs facility to cut hair. Before he was even allowed in the facility, he had 5 negative COVID tests in 5 consecutive days. When he got to the facility, from what I understand, he took a rapid test, started cutting hair, cut both Demarcus Robinson's and Daniel Kilgore's hair, and then they came back and said that he was positive based on that new test. So nobody else got haircuts. They were the only 2 Chiefs that were exposed. Everybody left. The barber left, and neither player has tested positive, but they were deemed high-risk close contacts. So because they were high-risk close contacts, there was a mandatory 5-day isolation period. Fortunately, this happened, I think, either Monday or Sunday or Monday, because the 5 days will expire on Friday. They're able to travel to Tampa Bay on Saturday, but they're not able to practice up until then. So they'll still be able to make it, but they'll have that 5-day isolation period. All right, so let's talk about some the game preview. Let's talk about some comparisons. Now I'm going to compare like positions to like positions, but ultimately my opinion of how the game's going to go is going to be more how those positions go against their counterparts. So let's start with what is probably the most talked about part of this game, and it's Tom Brady. Like Dylan said, probably the best, the quarterback. It's probably arguably the best quarterback to ever play the game versus Patrick Mahomes, who is probably currently one of, or possibly the best quarterback to play currently. And regular season numbers would Regular season numbers would confirm that they're very similar, at least this year. Brady's regular season completion percentage was 65.7. Mahomes was 66, a hair better. Brady had 4,633 passing yards. Mahomes had 4,740. Brady had 40 touchdowns. Mahomes had 38. Brady had 12 interceptions. Mahomes had 8, so a little bit better there. And their quarterback ratings, Brady 102.2, and Mahomes 108.2. So both excellent seasons, very similar. However, postseason has not been at all the same. If you look at Brady's postseason 3-game averages, he's averaging 55 completion percentage. In the 2 playoff games Mahomes has played, he's averaging 75. That's a significant difference. 55% completion percentage is poor, not good at all. They're both averaging about the same amount of yards, 286 for Brady, 290 for Mahomes. Similar amount of touchdowns. Brady's got a little bit more, 2.3 to 2 of Mahomes. However, Brady is averaging, he had 3 interceptions in the second half of the last game against Buffalo. I think they played. Anyway, had 3 interceptions at the end of that game. So he's averaging 1 a game, and his quarterback rating is lower as well, 90.8 versus 118. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. Actually, I'll skip over to that. That's part of my reasoning behind who I think is going to win. Not only has their average stats been different, but they've been on 2 different trajectories. So, for example, the last 3 games, he's essentially been about 55% of all of his passes completed. That's poor. His quarterback rating has declined. He started off at 104.3 in the wild card round. The next round divisionally was 92.9, and then championship 73.8 at Green Bay. So steadily declining. I mentioned in the second half of the game, and it was actually against Green Bay. He was 6 for 13, which is less than half, 46.2% did he complete. Only had 7 yards, no touchdowns, 3 picks, and a 23.4 rating. So he's declined in completion percentage and quarterback rating. He's thrown more interceptions, in the more recent game. And at the same time, Mahomes has actually been improving over his 2 games. He hasn't done poorly. His completion percentage was 70% versus Cleveland. It jumped up to 76 against Buffalo. Both remarkable numbers. He passed for 255 yards against Cleveland, 325 against Buffalo. His rating was 106.9 against Cleveland, 127.6 against Buffalo, and passing touchdowns, 1 against Cleveland, 3 against Buffalo. So there's different trajectories here. Doesn't mean they're going to continue on this way, but I would assume there's a pretty good chance that they will. So I think, in my opinion, even though Tom Brady is the best ever, I think Mahomes has the edge here. I think Kansas City and their passing game is going to be better than Brady's. So then we're going to look at some running backs. Neither team is a heavy running team. Fournette for the Bucs has been playing well in the postseason, has had some good numbers, but at the same time, Chiefs have that rookie Clyde Edwards-Helaire who's looked good, had some experience catching the ball out of the backfield in college. So hopefully that's something they can lean on. The Chiefs defense has allowed roughly 4.5 yards per carry through 18 games. So that's 20th in the league. So there is an opportunity for Tampa Bay to utilize Fournette often and take advantage of that weakness. Similar in the opposite way, the Bucs defense has only given up 3.4 yards per carry through 19 games, which is first in the league. So they've done a very good job of shutting down the run, which is meaningful if they were going up against a running team, but they're not. Kansas City, again, is not a big running team. They're a big passing team. So that strength in their defense is most likely not going to make a big difference. I lumped in the wide receivers and the tight ends together. They're both going to be out there running around, receiving, catching passes. And I think that when we lump them together, I think it's a bigger picture of how they'll do in the passing game. And I think this is Kansas City's edge as well. Now, strictly based on wide receivers, perhaps not. Tampa Bay has Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and AB. Antonio Brown is their top 3, and Antonio Brown is their 3rd guy. Those 3 are probably I can't think of a better receiving core. KC has Tyreek Hill, and Tyreek Hill's stats were better than any of the 3 individual players that Tampa Bay has. but there's a drop off after Tyreek Hill. Sammy Watkins is supposed to be healthy, but I don't think he's really lived up to what everybody thought he could be just yet. He also is coming off an injury. And McCole Hardman is fast. He's able to make big plays, but he also makes big mistakes. If you remember, he fumbled a punt. I believe it was the last game they played. So he makes mistakes. So he has the opportunity for big plays, but he also has the opportunity for game-changing mistakes. So then if you include tight ends, it becomes, I think, in my opinion, a bigger edge towards Kansas City. I think it shifts over to Kansas City because Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce combined had better stats than all of, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and Antonio Brown. So we all know that Kelce set the record for receiving yards for a tight end with 1,416. He was the second top receiver in the NFL. So he's able to make big plays. So the combination of Tyreek Hill and Kelce, I think, is bigger than Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and Antonio Brown. Now, I'm not forgetting about Gronkowski, and he could have a huge game. He had he had over 100 yards against the Chiefs in Week 12. But I don't think that the Gronk alone is Hill, Kelce, and Watkins over Evans. Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. He is. I had somebody comment here. I believe that backfield with the tight end, or I'm sorry, those receivers with the tight end is going to be better. So let's move on to offensive lines. So far, I think quarterback goes to Kansas City. Tight end, wide receivers go to Kansas City. Running backs slightly to Tampa Bay, but not a meaningful part of the game. Offensive line, that's another one that goes to Tampa Bay. Kansas City, even though you may not know it, has only one starter on their offensive line that has been consistent throughout the whole year, and that's their center, Austin Reiter. Very similar to the Eagles. Now, I don't think that the Eagles have had, the Chiefs has had so many combinations. But even so, they've only allowed 24 sacks all season, which is fourth best in the league. So there has been some changes, but they've stayed consistent. Now, that was all with Eric Fisher, who I mentioned they're 27-1 with and 4-4 without. And with Eric Fisher, the Buccaneers were able to pressure Mahomes 16 times in Week 12. So without him, chances are they're going to be able to get to him more often. I don't think that's going to be a significant game changer, but that's something to think about. Tampa Bay has had more consistency on their line, and they've only allowed 22 sacks, which is third best, so slightly better than Kansas City. So the edge goes to Tampa Bay. Defensive lineman, linebacker comparison. There isn't a lot of injuries on this part. They're both pretty healthy. But overall, the Buccaneers defense has been much better than Kansas City's when it comes to this part of when it comes to run stopping and sacks, right? So the Chiefs defense had 32 sacks this season, which ranks 14th. Tampa Bay had 48, which was 5th. So Tampa Bay's been getting a lot more pressure with their defensive line than the Chiefs. The Chiefs also, in similar stats for run defense, the Chiefs are ranked 21st. In run defense, they allowed 122.1 yards a game. Tampa Bay was ranked 1st in run defense, only allowing 80.6 yards a game. So defensive linemen, linebackers, it's a clear win for Tampa Bay. Again, their strength, though, with run defense may not be valuable against the Chiefs, which are primarily a passing team. Now, both teams struggle with running backs out the backfield. And I think that's going to be a focus, at least for the Chiefs, because they throw the ball more often and they have a running back who's had been successful in college with that. But Kansas City has allowed the second most receiving yards to a running back, and Tampa Bay has allowed the most. So look for that to be a big game, a big part of the game. And then when it comes to the secondary, go stand in a corner. When it comes to the secondary, Tampa Bay was ranked 21st in passing yards allowed with 246. KC was ranked 14th, so slightly better with 236, 10 yards per game average. Tampa Bay is ranked 29th in opponent's completion percentage. So quarterbacks were able to pass against them at a 69% rate, which is above average. Remember, I think the record by a quarterback set was in the low 70s. So 69% for all quarterbacks that you've played is actually pretty high, and that reflective in their 29th ranking. KC, however, their secondary was ranked 5th with a 62.66% opponent's quarterback rating. So they did much better. KC's also much more aggressive with their secondary. They often send 6 people. This is how they create turnovers. And in their first matchup, that was really the outlying statistic that I found anyway, was that Tom Brady had 2 interceptions. I mean, Mahomes had a fumble, but so they had 2 turnovers and they only had 1. That was the main. Kansas City had a significant amount more passing yards. They had significantly more time of possession, which will wear down Tampa Bay's defense. So I don't expect things to be much different. So here you go. Here is the Bald Eagle Podcast official Super Bowl prediction. So I predict the final score will be 37-27 in favor of the Chiefs. I think it's going to be further apart than the odds makers. I think the spread is 3 points. And my opinion is that even though Tampa Bay will probably still get pressure on Mahomes, maybe even more than they did the first time, I don't think it's going to meaningfully change the game. And if you I go back to Week 12 as evidence. In Week 12, the Bucs were able to get to Mahomes 16 times, at least pressure him 16 times. But out of those 16 pressures, they only sacked him twice. He only lost 6 yards. And in the process, he completed 37 of his 49 passes, which is 75.5%. So he was not rattled at all. Didn't throw any interceptions. Threw for almost 500 yards, 462 yards, and 3 touchdowns, and had a 124.7 quarterback rating, which off of memory would have been either the best or second best in the playoffs. So even though they were able to pressure him 16 times, it essentially didn't bother him. He still had an excellent game. So the fact that Eric Fisher's not there might have an impact, but I don't think it's going to be significant enough to throw Mahomes off. So they should just Kansas City should just continue to throw deep balls downfield. I mentioned we talked about Mahomes or we talked about how successful he was against the rush before. I think he continues to use his mobility to avoid their rush. I think perhaps he'll dump the ball off more often to Clyde Edwards-Helaire if his receivers can't get open, and it could be a breakout game for him. I agree. Yeah, Dylan. I thought, honestly, I was thinking in the 40s for the Chiefs too, but at the same time, I think Tampa Bay's defense is going to be able to hold them down a little bit. I don't think they're going to be enough. I don't think they're going to be able to hold Mahomes down and the offense completely, but enough that I don't think it's going to be a huge run up by KC. So I agree with you, Dylan. I think KC's offense is too much for Tampa Bay, but they have a good enough defense to slow them down a little bit. So I think they're going to keep throwing the ball downfield. Tyreek Hill, I'm sure they'll use a lot. Hopefully they'll get some good plays from Hardman. Dumping the ball off to Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Hopefully he'll have a breakout game. It'd be good for him. And that would be essentially focusing on all of Tampa Bay's weaknesses, the pass game, and running backs out of the backfield. The only way that and at the same time, Kansas City's defense should, of course, try and pressure Brady. That's common sense. Almost every quarterback in the league under pressure, fails and makes mistakes. But Brady has been on, I mentioned, a downward trajectory. So if I'm the defense, I am all out on Brady, trying to continue that decline, throw him off his game, and continue the horrible quarter or half he had against the Packers. So that's what I do. Get in his face, disrupt him as much as possible. KC does that not necessarily with the best defensive line, but more with their secondary and rushing more people, blitzing often. And I think they can be successful with that. So I mentioned the decline. I won't go over all that again. But in my opinion, I'm not saying that Tampa Bay can't win. Obviously, there's enough people that think that there's a shot that the odds aren't that far away. The only way that I think Tampa Bay wins is if Mahomes just has a bad game. I don't know that there's much that Tampa Bay can do to cause Mahomes to have a bad game. Even, if you look at some of his poorer games, he had a lower completion percentage, but he doesn't throw a lot of interceptions. So I don't know that turnovers are going to be the key for Tampa Bay. If there's any way for them to win, it would be to perhaps Tampa Bay should avoid trying to rush or blitz, and perhaps Tampa Bay should put a lot of men in the secondary. Not a lot of zone, because every quarterback can pick apart zone. Run some man coverage with some safeties deep to prevent the big pass, because that's a huge thing that they have to prevent. So if Tampa Bay, and I think 100% it's going to come down to, if Tampa Bay has a shot, it's going to come down to their defense. I don't think that Tom Brady will light the game up and win it for them. I think he'll do. I don't think he'll continue to decline. I don't think he'll have a 60% rating or not complete more than half of his passes. But I don't think he's gonna win the game for Tampa Bay. Could be wrong, but I don't think he will. I think Tampa Bay's defense, if they can pull it off, will win the game. Tampa Bay is going to have to just essentially get in, not necessarily pressure Mahomes, because that doesn't work, but drop enough people back that he can't find receivers. So that would be the key for them to win. I did mention though that Mahomes has been on a upward trajectory, getting better as the playoffs went through. So if that continues, I don't think that the Bucs have a shot. So again, final score 37-27 in favor of KC. All right. Let's move to a little bit of the Eagles news. There's been a lot of moves with our coaching staff. So I'm going to recap some of the things we already went over, and you probably know. Of course, we hired a new head coach in Nick Sirianni, new defensive coordinator in Jonathan Gannon. We have a new defensive line coach in Tracy Rocker. Our new pass game coordinator is Kevin Patullo. Shane Steichen is our new offensive coordinator. Jason Michael is our new tight end coach. Brian Johnson is our new quarterback coach. Our offensive line coach stays the same with Jeff Stoutland. That was a requirement upon hiring Sirianni, as far as I understand. We did lose Deuce Staley. We mentioned that to the Lions. We just hired Nick Rallis for linebackers coach. He's replacing Ken Flaholi. Ken Flaholi, his contract ended this year, and we just let it expire and didn't pick it up again. So he's going to replace him. He played linebacker at the University of Minnesota from 2012 to 2016. He spent the last 3 seasons as the Vikings defensive quality control coach and their assistant linebackers coach. So getting promoted up to linebackers coach. Hopefully he does really well. We also hired Michael Clay. Michael Clay is our new special teams coordinator. He's replacing Dave Phipp, who we also lost to the Lions. He played linebacker and special teams for the Oregon Ducks under none other than Chip Kelly as his coach through 2009, 2012. He did give it a shot in the NFL. He was signed with the Dolphins in 2013, but got cut and at the end of the preseason and didn't make a roster the next year. Moved to a defensive quality control coach with the Eagles in 2014. Right. Spent the last 5 seasons with the 49ers. I'm going to talk about Moorhead as far as wide receivers coach. As far as I can see, they're keeping him, but you're right, Lawrence. I'm not sure if they are. So Michael Clay was a defensive quality control coach with the Eagles in 2014. Moved to special teams coach with the Eagles in 2015. But then he went to the 49ers. 2016, he was assistant special teams coach. 2017, he moved to strength and conditioning coach. And then the last 3 years, 2018 through 2020, he was I couldn't find his official position with the 49ers. It just said he was helping the special teams coach. When he was hired, he was the youngest coordinator in the NFL at 29. And generally speaking, the majority of our coaching staff is on the younger end. I think the average age is below 40, which I don't know how that compares to other teams, but that is awfully young. That's younger than me, so making me feel old. We also hired secondary coach Denard Wilson. Denard Wilson played corner and safety for the Maryland Terrapins from 2000 to 2003, started 30 games, played in 42. I would agree with that. I would agree with an upgrade with Moorhead at wide receivers coach, especially since our wide receivers didn't do anything special. But we'll get that. We'll get to that, Lawrence. Okay, Ryan. Okay, so he is officially back. I thought so. So Denard Wilson, secondary coach. Mentioned he played with the Maryland Terrapins. Started 30 games, appeared in 42. Signed with the the football team. They were the Redskins back then in 2004 as an undrafted free agent, but had a career-ending injury very shortly after that and never played again. He was a pro scout after that from 2008 to 2011. I believe he also opened between the time that he played in the NFL and he was a pro scout. I think he had a strength and conditioning company as well. But as the Bears pro scout through 2008 and 2011, He then moved to the Rams as the defensive quality control coach from 2012 to 2014, and became defensive back coach 2015 to 2016. He moved to the Jets to be the same position, defensive back coach in 2018. And then for 2019 and 2020, he was the defensive back coach / passing game coordinator for the Jets. So we'll get to Moorhead in a minute here. So to finish up with Denard Wilson, he coached people like Jamal Adams, Janoris Jenkins, Rodley McLeod, Tremaine Johnson, LaMarcus Joyner, and Morris Claiborne. So he has some history teaching or coaching some pretty good talent. So hopefully he can bring that over and help us out, because that was a big, especially with the zone. We just not good with the zone. So so I got some comments here that about Aaron Moorhead. That was my second last guy. So he is our wide receiver coach. I thought, and it was confirmed by Ryan Reese, that he was hired last year and retained in 2021. He played for 5 years in the NFL with the Colts from 2003 to 2007, and actually won Super Bowl 41 with the Colts against the Bears. He was a wide receiver coach in 2013 and 14 for Virginia Tech, moved to Texas A&M for 2015, 2017, and then at Vanderbilt from 28 to 2019. So Aaron Moorhead. So let's talk about him just for a second. So a couple people said they wanted an upgrade from Moorhead. However, there was another comment from Dylan who said that you could credit Hightower and Fulgham's success with Moorhead, but at the same time, that might be partially because of offensive styles, their schemes. I don't think so. In my opinion, I'm not calling for Moorhead to go necessarily. He was only here 1 year last year. I don't know that we can expect him to to come in and make a significant difference in his first year. But I will say that I'm hopeful, and I think that we have a lot of other offensive. I think when you look at the offensive coaches that we hired, including our head coach, they all had a background in most of them anyway in coaching wide receivers. There seemed to be an emphasis, and I think this is partially why Staley was looked over for the head coaching position. I feel like there was an emphasis on wide receiver and passing game quarterback coaches. And I think that's smart, because I think the position we needed the least help in was running backs. So I don't know that we needed a significant amount of help at running back. We have one of the better running backs in the league, and I think if they give him the ball more often, I think he can be real successful. Miles Sanders. So I think he's going to get a lot of help. Perhaps they didn't switch out Moreland because he didn't do bad enough of a job last year, and he's going to have a lot of help from a lot of the other offensive coaches we've hired. So I think he hopefully has a good season. I would say though, I don't know that he did the best job, because our wide receivers, not only did they not do well statistically, but they weren't the best at running routes. They weren't the best at. There was always some confusion, it seemed, between us and Wentz, which I would blame a majority on Wentz. But so I don't know. We'll see this year. I don't know that. I don't know that I feel strongly either way, and I'm okay with him retaining. I also Lawrence mentioned that he likes young coaches. I'm in favor of young coaches too. I think that young coaches bring fresh, new ideas. And you're right. The only way to get experience is to get thrown in. I just think that some tenure is nice. I think there's a good mix. If you have a ton of young people, perhaps their ideas are a little bit, too intriguing. And Chip Kelly, not that he was young, but is a pretty good example. Chip Kelly tried hard to bring a successful college model, a fresh new way of running the offense into the NFL. And it fell pretty hard on, especially the second year, pretty hard on its face, and wasn't successful. So I think you need some tenured people, because I think to a degree there is a value to some of the things that have done traditionally. But I'm a favor of young coaches. They've seemed to do pretty well in the NFL, and I'm hopeful that they do in our situation. Let's see. Right, yeah. So Lawrence mentioned too. Like I said, a lot of our other coaches, offensive coordinators, head coach, have been quarterback, wide receivers coaches in the past. So I think he's going to get a lot of support and help. So I'm hopeful that not only will he, plus all the support he gets, make a big difference. All right. Lastly, we hired a new defense. Well, I don't know if he's not the secondary coach because, of course, we hired Denard Wilson. Under Denard Wilson will be Jay Valai, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. But we're not sure what position he'll be under again because Denard Wilson was just hired as a secondary coach, perhaps a cornerbacks coach, or I'm not sure. He played cornerback for 4 years at Wisconsin. He also played. I'm sorry. Then he moved into coaching after Wisconsin from 2016 to 2017. He was Georgia's defensive quality control coach. There's a lot of those quality control coaches around, and I tried to look up the duties of a quality control coach, and they're pretty broad. So I think it's more of a learning position. Then in 2018, Valai was Kansas City's assistant defensive back coach. He was also the defensive quality control coach. In 2019, he was the Rutgers cornerback coach. And then in 2020, he was hired as Texas cornerback coach. So yeah, he's going to be the quarterback's coach. I couldn't find but someone here is saying he was hired as the cornerback's coach. So that's what he is. Couldn't find anything solid about that, but that's what he is. So that sums up all the coaching changes. I think someone else commented, and I think they're correct. I think the only coach we haven't hired is running backs coach. We missed that with Staley. So I don't believe we've hired anybody. So so Daniel here is saying Kelsey lost the last game. Go back and look how he threw the ball everywhere, but to the quarterback he needs to go. That's a good comment. Now, I would say I don't think Kelsey has to go. I don't know that I'm that strong against Kelsey, and I don't know that he did it intentionally. Well, if we're talking about the last game, I wanted them to lose. So, in my opinion, if he did it intentionally, I don't know that I'm upset. But I still don't think that Kelsey did so poorly that we need to get rid of him. He was number one. He was the only lineman that we had consistently in every game. And number two, he didn't do a poor job. Now he had his moments. There were a couple of times where he did miss blocks and didn't do as well as he should have. I don't think we're on the level of cutting him yet. Now, if I don't think we should draft a center. But if for throughout free agency or through a trade we can acquire a younger up and coming center, I think we should. Yeah, I don't know. So Daniel Hutchins is saying that he did it to make the coach and quarterback look bad. I don't know about that. I don't, to be honest with you, there's so many rumors going on about the Eagles in reference to Carson Wentz, right? And what he has said, or the fact that his silence, might be saying something. And all the coaches have been talking about the quarterback competition. From what I understand, it's going to be a competition. There's no set starter. Jalen Hurts has a relationship with that, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know if Kelsey and I don't know. It's if it's true that Kelsey intentionally did it and it wasn't to get a better pick in the draft or to block the Giants from going to the playoffs, perhaps he leaves. Yeah, I didn't hear that. I didn't hear that stuff, Daniel. I don't know. There's a lot of drama that's going on. So, I would actually agree more with Dylan, who said that Kelsey is a staple on the team. Kelsey, Brooks, and Lane are crucial. Lane Johnson, but definitely Brooks. And I still say I say we keep Kelsey and look for his replacement. I don't think we cut him. I don't think we trade him. I think we keep him because it gives us some consistency. At least one part of our offensive line is consistent. And goes from there. So the Eagles hired Tracy Rocker to be the D-line coach. Tracy Rocker was hired to be the defensive line coach. Absolutely. I did say that earlier. I did not. Yeah. So he's Tracy Rocker was hired to be our defensive line coach. But anyway, so we'll see. I think we should keep Kelsey aside from any drama. Of course, if there was legitimate drama and he does, if he decides to do that, then I would absolutely want him cut. If he's going to cause drama, especially next year when we're no longer trying to lose games, we're trying to win and get to it. And I agree. Lane is getting older. His performance isn't as good, and he is injury prone. So I think we should again look for his replacement. But I think one of the things that we struggled with last year was our offensive line's consistency. So I think we should go into, we are keeping the same defense, right? 4-3. You're right, Lawrence. We should go with as many of last year's starters as possible just to try and build some consistency. And I would be all for Daniel. I would be all for Westbrook being a running back coach. Brian Westbrook, if he came back and coached, that'd be great. He was one of the better running backs we've ever had. So, but that'd be great. So I'll keep an eye on the running back coach to see if we hire anybody else. Let me see if there's any other comments in here that I missed. It looks like. Oh, I'm sorry. There was a note here that we were looking for a defensive line coach, but we already hired one. Okay, all right. So that's all the coaching moves. All the coaching moves that we're aware of. There could be some rumors about the running backs coach for Westbrook. That sounds great. That'd be nice. So I thought I'd end with a Philadelphia Eagles fact. I always try and throw in some facts. I'm a huge fan of the Eagles. I love to see how they've done historically and all that stuff. Our defensive line is dysfunctional, but they were able to get pressure. I'm not sure that I think if anything, our defensive line was the strength of our defense and generally the strength of our team. So we'll see how that all plans out. So here's the fact for this episode. I thought since we're coming up on the Super Bowl, I'm not going to talk about our recent Super Bowl trips or wins or losses. I thought I'd go all the way back to our first championship, first NFL championship as a part of the NFL. And that was, of course, in 1948. 1948 was our 16th year in the NFL. In fact, the 1947 season, we went to the NFL championship against the Chicago Cardinals and lost. So we get back to the championship again. And by the way, I don't like the Eagles. The Super Bowl era, it was called the NFL Championship because in 1970, which I think was Super Bowl 2 or 3, the AFL and the NFL merged. So pre-Super Bowl era, there was an NFL championship and there was a separate AFL championship. So there was an argument over who the true champion was. However, we did win a few pre-Super Bowl. As a side note, you're right, Dylan. The defensive line, while I believe it was the strength of our team, could of course done better. There were some players that underperformed, and they did have to compensate. They didn't always have enough time because the secondary was poor and often did give. That's one of the things I screamed about through the season is on third and short, third and or first and short positions when we had them backed up, we would run zone. Or we would give the receivers 10 yards off the ball. So you're right. The defensive line could have been significantly more impactful had our secondary for one time even during a game bumped receivers off the line and thrown off their timing. But we didn't. We actually gave them 10 yards, making the defensive line job more difficult because they have less time to get to the quarterback. So yeah, I mean, Wentz, I don't know. Daniel Hutchins is talking about Wentz. And that he's a head case, like Randall Cunningham. And after Randall Cunningham got his head together, he almost took two teams to the Super Bowl. I will agree 100% that Carson Wentz's, my opinion anyway, is that 100% that Carson Wentz's problems are mental. It's in his head. Perhaps it's the drafting of Jalen Hurts. Perhaps it's his relationship with the coaching staff. There is, you could guess, and really the only person that really knows is Carson Wentz. Whether or not he'll ever admit to it, perhaps in 20 years in a 30 for 30, they all might get together and talk about what happened. But generally, I don't think we're going to know. But it is mental. And here's the thing: one of the things I want to point out, because everybody is saying if we get rid of Wentz and one of the I saw a tweet earlier that. Wentz still wants to leave, and if there's a good package, they'll definitely get rid of him. But if we do trade him and he does well, that doesn't mean that he would have done well with the Eagles. I just want to point that out. Just like Aguilar. Let's talk about Aguilar. Oh, he's so great with the Raiders. He's so great with the Raiders. It's because of look at Aguilar. The season before Aguilar left, he dropped so many passes, and that has nothing to do with how the ball's thrown. perhaps some quarterbacks. I've heard, because I've only been with right-handed quarterbacks, but I've heard left-handed quarterbacks throw the spin on the ball is different. It's harder to catch. You're not used to it. Aguilar was a horrible receiver. I think he should have gotten cut after the year where he dropped so many passes. He dropped meaningful passes that would have changed games. I was glad to see him go. I'm still also glad that he's doing well, because sometimes people just don't match up with the system, just don't match up with the other players. So if Wentz leaves and does well, it doesn't mean that we should have kept him, because as of now, nobody really knows what's wrong with him. And if we don't know what's wrong with him, how can we fix it? Right? And if we do know what's wrong with him, we didn't fix it. So just because things end here, possibly, and just because it was a poor ending, doesn't mean that he couldn't resurrect his career at another system. He could, by all means, and it's, right, Aguilar, yeah. We couldn't cut him right away because of his contract. But Wentz could leave and just be surrounded by, he could leave and have while Miles Sanders is a great running back, we don't run often. He could leave and go to a team that runs heavily, something that we never would have done. And that could be a reason why his stats improve. So if Wentz is traded, and in my opinion, I think we should trade him if possible, and he goes somewhere else and does well, it doesn't mean he would have done well with us. Not at all. The things don't convert over that way. And as a side note, if in my opinion it is, but if I'm right and his issues are mental, there could be no way to fix it in Philadelphia. There could be no way I don't know if I want him to go to New England. There could be no way for Carson Wentz to overcome his issues. Daniel Hutchins said we should send him to the Patriots. I don't agree with that at all. Because I think he has the talent. If Belichick could get it out of him, I think the AFC could be ruled by the Patriots again. But so anyway, if it's mental, which I think it is, there could be no way. The only way for him to move on would be for things to happen to go down or to end exactly the way he thinks it should. Because realistically, if he doesn't get exactly what he wants, and I hear, again, more rumors about him, I hear that that's part of the problem. He feels like he runs the organization essentially, and they put a lot of weight on him as a player and a talent. But if it is mental, if things don't go the way he wants, then. So Daniel Hutchins said, send him to New England, and said has been reported. I'm reading it. So I don't know if you're suggesting, Daniel, that Wentz has been traded to New England. I'm not sure what you're reading or what's been reported. If you want to put that in the comments, I'll read it. But when you think about the NFL and how competitive they are and how hard how much effort they give in, the littlest thing in your mind can throw you off. And if things don't end the way that he likes it, that could be a little thing in his head that throws him off. So he could never be good in Philadelphia again. And it could just be a matter of going to another team and forgetting about everything and starting fresh. That might be the only option for Wentz. I don't know. This is all speculation. We're all guessing here and kind of guessing what's going to happen in the future. But, realistically, with stuff that's in your head, and again, the level of play in the NFL, the littlest thing. Oh, yeah. I'll get Daniel's putting some more notes up here. Yeah. So anyway, even the littlest thing in your head, even some resentment for the way he was treated, even remotely, could cause him to decline and make mistakes. So I say, trade him. Now, perhaps, as Ryan Reese noted, that perhaps a whole new coaching staff is enough for him to forget about what happened in the past and start fresh and move on. Perhaps. And I'm okay with us attempting to bring him back to his glory, based on his glory and his experience. I'm absolutely okay with them trying to repair things. And if they are successful, then by all means we should continue. If he goes back to his his MVP form, absolutely we should start him and he should be our starter. And then if there are issues down the road, my assumption would be that if Nick Sirianni and his staff was able to repair Carson Wentz the first time, they could do it the second time. But as it stands now, unless Sirianni and company can turn him around significantly, I think the best thing is to move on. And there were some other comments here that the comments that he changed plays to upset Doug Peterson. We talked about that. They were reported, but nobody's confirmed that. Peterson didn't confirm that. I don't know off the top of my head that anybody that was in the huddle or would have had. I don't know where that reporting came from, but it's just a rumor. And until things settle down, I talk a little bit about rumors, but I don't want to spend too much time on rumors because it can somewhat be a waste of time because some of this stuff doesn't come to fruition. Let's see. He does. Athena said he's got talent. He's going to come back and crush us. He absolutely does have talent, and he absolutely could. But that doesn't mean that if we keep him, he's going to crush everybody else. That was my point. Just because he is talented and probably has it in him to play well, doesn't mean that's going to happen with us. There could still be some sort of stigma, All right, so let's move back on to. I think we're done with the comments. Let's move quickly to our fact. So again, 16th year in the league, 1948 Philadelphia Eagles. Training camp was held at Saranac Lake High School in Saranac Lake, New York, which is the interesting part is, and I might even take a trip, but as of 2014, the building where the Eagles stayed is still a local landmark. It's located on Lake Street in Saranac Lake, and it's still called the Eagles Nest. Doug could have been a stronger coach, according to Lawrence Melton. We would not have been a 4-win team. My opinion is that throughout the season, I think Doug. So my opinion is that, and I'm kind of sharing what I might have done as a head coach, is that Doug, as a head coach, you obviously you're part of everything. But you're not significant necessarily part of everything because you're the head coach. You can't possibly be in everything 100%. So my opinion is that Doug Peterson ignored Carson Wentz's issues. And I think he did that for the same reason I would have, because Carson Wentz is a 5-year veteran that we're paying $100 million to. So I would not have been. I would have, talked to him about it, but I wouldn't have been overbearing with Carson Wentz, especially in the beginning. We didn't have a preseason. We didn't have a regular training camp. Perhaps he was rusty. As the season went on, I think I think Doug Peterson got a little bit more upset that Wentz was essentially staying poor, and I personally couldn't understand why Press Taylor, wasn't anywhere to be found. I don't understand how our quarterback has a record decline and the quarterback's coach was nowhere. So in my opinion, I think Doug Peterson he does like Press Taylor because he suggested that Press Taylor be the offensive coordinator which I would have fired him for too when he went to talk to Lurie. But I think he relied on Press Taylor to fix or to help Carson Wentz. And I think he had a good relationship with Press Taylor, obviously, as he tried to promote him. And he valued that relationship to the point that he felt like if Press Taylor couldn't fix Carson Wentz, that it was a Carson Wentz problem. And that's something maybe Carson Wentz had to fix. And so he continued. Doug Peterson was very stubborn, I'll admit. I think he continued to call the same plays that he felt like he should have in the situations, not taking into consideration Wentz's significant decline. But I think if he could have, in my opinion, a stronger in the definition of a stronger coach for Doug would have been benching Wentz sooner. That would have been, in my opinion, a stronger coach. Benching him sooner, giving us, especially, towards the end, not of course not at the end when we were eliminated, but towards the end when we had a chance. Well, sooner than when we had the last chance to win. Before, I think Hurts was put in when we had to win out to. We had to win out, or we wouldn't make it the playoffs. That was too late. Perhaps cut Wentz earlier to give Jalen Hurts a little bit of a chance to get comfortable. Right, Lawrence. That's exactly what I said. Doug wanted to promote Press Taylor to offensive coordinator from quarterback's coach, when as the quarterback coach, he oversaw the worst quarterback decline in NFL history. Should have been fired immediately. In fact, I think Press Taylor should have been fired, halfway, 3/4 of the way through the season. So anyway, I keep getting distracted by the comments. 1948. I mentioned Lake Saranac. Something I'm probably going to go check out and see if it's still there is their old Eagles nest. I think that'd be great to see the Press Taylor is trash. Ryan Reese agreed. I think it'd be neat to see where the 1948 Eagles had training camp. Just to give you some perspective, in 1948, the NFL only had 10 teams. It was split into two divisions, the East and the West. We started the season 0-1-1. We actually lost to the what were they? The Chicago Cardinals in the first game of the season. So we were 0-1-1. We then won the next 8 games, and we finished 9-2-1. That was first in the NFL East. We held our opponents to 156 points, which was second in the league. Our offense scored 376 points, which is also second in the league. Our starting quarterback was Tommy Thompson. And he was over the season, he was 141 out of completions out of 246 attempts, which is 57.3%. He had 1,965 yards, 25 touchdowns, which I think is pretty high for only 141 completions, 11 interceptions, that's also somewhat high, and a 98.4 quarterback rating. Our leading rusher was Steve Van Buren. He had 201 rushes for 945 yards, averaging 4.7 yards per carry, and he also had 10 touchdowns. And then Pete Pijos was our top receiver. He had 46 receptions, 766 yards, which is a 16.7 average, and he also had 11 touchdowns. So offense was pretty good in 1948. The game that we played, so we made it to the NFL Championship, the equivalent of current Super Bowl. Again, a rematch of the championship the year before when we lost to the Chicago Cardinals. This year, the game was called the Philly Blizzard. It was called the Philly Blizzard because it was held during what they say was a significant snowstorm. I looked up online historically, and Philadelphia got 8 inches of snow. So I guess it's significant in the context of Philadelphia. 8 inches is probably a decent amount. 4 of those inches had accumulated by kickoff. So it had snowed 4 inches between kickoff and the end of the day. The game was extremely short because the majority of the plays were running. In fact, both quarterbacks combined for a total of 5 completions on 23 attempts. So the game is only 2 hours and 2 minutes long. And we won on a turnover by the Chicago Cardinals in their own territory. We grabbed the ball, and Steve Van Buren ran a 5-yard touchdown run to score the only score in the game, 7-0, and we ended up winning. Let's see. Let's check the comments real quick before I head out. He offered, so he offered. Oh, so I didn't know this, and I don't know if this is a rumor or if this has been verified. Daniel Hutchins is saying that they offered Deuce Staley the offensive coordinator job last season, and he declined. I don't know if that's true or not. It would be disappointing if it was true, because I thought that would be the next stop for Deuce. I thought he could be. And I was hoping when Sirianni got hired, I was hoping he would get moved up. And again, I don't think he was, because he had a running back background. And again, the majority of our offensive coaches have wide receiver, quarterback backgrounds. Right. So one other thing that Lawrence mentioned that Doug should do, Lawrence mentioned about Doug Peterson, that he should have done perhaps, is holding players accountable for poor play. Okay, so he would have been the offensive coordinator, but just not been calling plays. So maybe that's why he declined. Gotcha, Daniel. So right, Carson wasn't the only player that did poorly, and Carson wasn't the only player that did poorly and wasn't reprimanded or held accountable for his poor play. So he could have been stronger on that. Absolutely. All right, guys, that's an hour. That's the end of my show. That's all I got. I appreciate all the comments. I appreciate all the likes and views. Keep an eye on my Instagram. It's Bald Eagle 4133, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Also, I am part of the Notoriety Sports Network. Go follow Notoriety Sports Network on all social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. And follow NSN Philly, a subset of Notoriety Sports Network. Notoriety Sports Network is an up and coming network of immediate updates on breaking news, stats. There's been a lot of information about our coaches, and Notoriety Sports Network and NSN Philly has done a great job posting that stuff immediately. Traditionally, the first people to get that stuff up. So keep an eye on Notoriety Sports Network. Keep an eye on NSN Philly. Follow everybody on social media. I'm on Wednesdays at 6 p.m. So keep an eye on me. And next year, go Eagles. Goodbye, everybody.